It is March 26th. It's been a while since we did our last Zoom call. Time is as weird as this is with the epidemic or the pandemic, that you think that, I don't know, time wouldn't get away, but it does. Thankfully, one of the positives, beside the fact that so many of us are starting to get vaccinated, is businesses starting to pick up. I was talking to a DJ last week, and he was saying that for the first time in, oh God, maybe a year, we've had more positive calls than negative. So for every call you get, I still have people, believe it or not, postponing. So I've had bar mitzvahs and stuff for November that are being pushed out to 2022, which I find interesting, because I would think that by November would be at least to more normalcy. But at least I'm getting calls and people are booking me. I booked a 2024 event and a couple 2023 events. So at least in that respect, there's some positivity, right? Where I look at doing this Zoom call with you guys now for a year, and initially it was pretty much gloom and doom for a long time, just not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think now I feel like people are starting to get that way. Here in California, we are we've gone from the purple to the red tier to the orange tier. There's rumors that we'll get to the yellow tier in a week or two. But it's amazing to go in and actually be able to eat inside a restaurant, even if it's
yeah,
totally nice, right? Nice to have that freedom. So yes. I did that the other day. I was like, wow, this is weird. And it is nice to have people starting to book events, and a lot of people are asking about travel right now. Clearly, people, it's not like they're ready to travel tomorrow, but a lot of people are asking questions about the trips that we have planned for 2022, even later this year, 2022, 2023 for sure. So that's, at least for me, it's like, maybe there's, something to look forward to beyond sitting here at home, and also, just that blanket of negativity that's kind of weighed all of us down for this entire time. So that's kind of nice to see that. And
totally.
So, and I know Peter and I were talking this before we went on recording here, but just about, there are some sporting events starting to happen. And so, there is a chance that soon I'll be shooting, although right now I talked to the San Jose Sharks, which of course is an indoor sport. And unlike some of the arenas where they're putting 20% or 30% capacity for fans, here in the Bay Area, they're not putting anybody in there, and they don't want any media in there that doesn't have to be there. So literally, it's as locked down or more locked down than you would think in a normal time, which is strange because if there's no crowd there, you could be 40 rows up shooting really far away from anybody. They don't want you in the building. So
it's tough territory up there.
Yep, and they don't want you on the field or on the ice levels if you don't have to be there. So so the Olympics, the latest on the Olympics, and a lot of people have sent me messages in the last couple of weeks or last week or so. Many of you saw that Tokyo has announced that they're not going to allow any spectators from other countries to go to the Olympics, which leads to a whole bunch of other issues. So for one, revenue-wise for them, you think about the investment that Japan has made of, I think it's now $14 billion to have people come, to try to get people to come to Japan. That's going to be brutal in the economy there. From a logistical standpoint, it causes issues for Team USA. There's obviously, they've said that they don't want anybody from other countries, but then there's talk like, but they'll allow certain sponsors, but will they allow family members? And so there's still question marks there. There's a meeting with the USOC, I believe actually with the USOC in 2 weeks, I believe it is, and I'll learn more then. But I hope to God they allow families there, probably vaccinated and so forth, because I think it'd be really sad to have to watch your child who's worked so hard to go to the Olympics on TV, and of course not everything's televised. So that would also be a challenge. So I think logistically, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
From a
quick
media perspective, oh,
question.
sorry, go ahead, Michael.
So with respect to the families, does the USOC pay for any travel of any family members, or is that all on the family to pay?
I believe it's all in the family to pay. They pay for all the athletes.
Even tickets?
Tickets.
No, but
So the athletes athletes get tickets to events. Actually, it's interesting that you bring this up. When I've shot events in the past, one of the challenges, of course, is when I shoot. I remember shooting Serena Williams in London at Wimbledon during the Olympics, and of course, what you want in the background is tons of cheering fans, right? Whatever. Well, there was whole sections.
They're empty.
They're
Yeah.
empty, right? Because they're
Family sections.
reserved for either VIPs, sponsors, or athletes to sit. Well, if no one's there, you end up with, here's Serena Williams, the background of your image is 50 empty seats, and it looks like no one even went there to watch her play,
Yeah.
which is really frustrating, especially when they're all lower section great seats, right, Peter? I mean, it's like,
Yeah, no, that's totally been a problem for as long as, I can remember. They want to hog those really good seats, and then they don't sit in them.
yeah, and there's like literally nobody. Like, it's weird. Like certain events, like when Phelps was in the pool, or Usain Bolt's running, whatever,
Yeah.
they'll fill. But even for Serena Williams, there was probably, I don't know, 100 seats with no one in them, and it's like it just looked horrible from a photographic standpoint, because you want to have people cheering or at least interested. It is funny because when we shoot a lot of other things, like I always tell people, shooting high school sports is harder than shooting the Olympics because you have crappy light.
Oh,
You had a bunch of cars and stuff. If it's a basketball indoor basketball place, they've always left the door open on the far side, for like a light spilling in. Or you have empty stands, or you got parents who aren't paying attention, or you get the little brother who's sitting there looking like he's bored out of his damn mind, can't stand being there. Like, this is your background. And so at the Olympics, when you're shooting, you want to have people who are really excited and they're holding their banners and all this, and you end up with nothing. So it's going to be interesting in Tokyo because they have yet to say what capacity they will fill, for one. And two, it'll only be primarily Japanese fans, which typical Olympics, 80% of the fans are locals, but those 20% are pretty vocal. And depending on the sport that you're shooting, for instance, if you take water polo, water polo in certain countries, they don't even know what that sport is. So they'll have very little attendance. So if it's USA versus Australia, you'll have tons of people from USA and Australia there. And so it'll be interesting for these venues when you have a sport that the Japanese don't know anything about to see if they fill them. And the other thing photographically will be, will it be every other or every third or every fourth seat that's filled? Because if you look at my collection of images from the last 6 Olympics, you have crowds. The Olympics are about the crowds. So to not have that and to have every third or fourth person is going to be strange. Now, my discussion with Canon on this is, and others, is it's good and bad. The bad is, I think from a personal standpoint, I love running into people with their American flags and, the fans, and not just Americans, it could be Swiss, it could be Australia, anybody. It's just cool to see people that are there cheering on their home country. And so not having that element, I think, will be strange. They don't want us on public transportation. They don't want us to eat in restaurants that are outside the bubble. And so that'll be weird too, because part of the culture is part of the experience. But photographically, I think the positive of this, I'm trying to always stay on the positive. And one of the positives is that it'll be different than any other Olympics I'll ever cover, and hopefully will ever cover, because of social distancing and because of the rules that we have to, adhere to. So in the past, when I'm shooting, you might see a bunch of other press, but they weren't wearing face masks, right? So now we're going to have a very different look, even with the press corps. And the rules of us 3 feet from every press, 6 feet from any athlete, and so forth. It's going to be the mix zone, which is where the athletes get interviewed, and I take photos of them in that area. I don't know how they're going to do the mix zone unless they use the boom mics like they do in a lot of the events here now. And everybody just stays really far away from the athletes. But that's also photographically not very interesting, because it's more interesting to have a bunch of press people holding their mics up to the athlete versus just a bunch of booms. So I think from a selfish standpoint, my blog, which generally gets about 30,000 readers a month, and during the Olympics usually jumps to anywhere between 200 to 400,000 readers. I think there'll be a lot of more readers this time, because I think everybody's going to wonder, what the hell is it like over there? What are the challenges that we're facing that we have never had to face before? And I've got the handbook. I think I mentioned this to you guys last time. And subsequently, I've gotten some more information. And, you know, it's going to be really weird to try to cover the Olympics, which is already hard enough under these conditions. And they've even talked about, do we need to quarantine there in Japan for 2 weeks before the games? And I thought to myself, A, I can't, because I've got a bunch of—
That'd be brutal.
It'd be brutal. I'm shooting events here. I've already booked for events that take me to about 4 days before I leave, or 3 days or whatever it is before I leave. But that means 2 weeks of being in Tokyo without covering the games at a cost of paying for hotels and everything for an extra 2 weeks. And foregoing events that I've got booked and contractually booked here. So you lost revenue. I mean, it would be that'd be a $15,000 delta to require. And so I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're going to ask us to be as careful as we can before we go. Clearly we'll be tested before we leave. We'll have to get tested, I believe, at the airport when we land, and then at the games when we get there. So it's going to be a lot of things going in my nose. I'm hoping by that point they'll have those rapid tests where you can just spit quickly and move on or something.
Do you mind if I ask another question?
Yeah, go ahead.
How's the format of these Zooms? Do we just ask questions, or?
Yeah, so you can type them in if you want into the chat area. That's fine too. And honestly, this one's pretty. So when I have a guest appearance, I try to keep it more locked down. But if you guys have questions, yeah, fire away. I'm totally okay with that.
So quick question to either one of you, either you, Peter, or you, Jeff. Given that there's going to be no spectators, presumably there's a lot less noise.
No, there'll still be spectators. It'll just be Japanese only.
Okay, fair enough. Is the fact that there's no noise, is that going to be disrupting, or is that going to help you focus on your photography or not?
Well, I'll tell you from past experience, most of the time it's fun. And and Peter knows this too, part of our job is to shoot what's happening in front of us, right, with the athletes. But when something great happens, you also immediately turn around and you get the shot of the fans cheering and their reactions. Because as I've taught in the past with sports, you want to get the action and the reaction. And so not having that from your home crowd. I mean, I before every game, I look and see who's got their face painted or who's got the big flag, right?
Got the crazy flag, the funny hat,
Yeah. Or even walking through the venues before the game, after the game, as you're walking. Sometimes I'll leave the press area and go into the public area just to walk through and see the fan base and get photos of people supporting their team, whether it's my team or opposing. It's still photographically fun to do. And so it will be different for sure, regardless. But yeah, we don't know how much they'll fill the stands, but clearly that's the positive. The negative is, I remember shooting in Russia. It was the hockey game, USA versus Russia, I believe men's. And the Russians, they chant Russia, Russia, and really loud. And I'm on the ice level, and they're in the row right, basically 5 feet from me, and they have these giant banners, and they're waving them, and they're hitting me in the head every time they're and I turn around like, can you stop? Or the worst is you get someone with an air horn or some loud device, and it's ear piercing. And so it is hard to shoot and concentrate when someone's blowing an air horn 10 feet from your head.
Yeah.
And so have you had that, Peter? Same thing?
Oh yeah. I've had it all. And then, The other is the college basketball game where they put you right in front of the band, the pep band.
Oh God. That would be
But
loud.
no, but usually I know for a while they had those horns they used the World Cup in South Africa, and then they outlawed them.
Correct.
Those,
The
but there's always going to be something.
And those, the
I'd rather
banging,
have that than
yeah.
silence. So.
Yeah, agreed. And silence is like, if any of you guys have ever watched like any of the games without the sound effects added of the crowd, and they do it for a reason. Like when you watch an NHL game, which I watch a lot of, they purposely pump in, if it's a call, like if someone takes a shot and it gets blocked and the goalie blocks it, then you hear this like, oh, well, obviously there's no crowds there, that's pumped in, but they do it because what they don't want you hearing is the athlete F-bombing because he missed the shot, or which of course, having shot on the bench, there's a lot of F-bombing and other.
You can hear every word they say. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And none of it's politically correct.
No.
So, but it is true. Like Peter said, I'd rather have the obnoxious air horn than complete silence. I think that, like, there was talk originally about having the Olympics with no fans. And I think even from an athlete's perspective, that would be really frustrating to be in that situation, because we rely on that energy almost as much as the athlete does, right? It gets us fired up to do our job. And also, this sounds weird, and I don't mean it to be, but it makes me, I'll speak for myself, it makes me feel special when you have a bunch of people who can't get to where I am, right? And so you laugh, but it's true. It's like, we got the best seat in the house, and we get to, I don't know, be places you can't be. I don't know, there's a certain kind of fun part to that. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, so it's good and bad, the whole situation. But like I said before, it's so different that I think that I will try to, on the blog, I'll probably try to focus as much on the backstory of what's happening, what it's like to be there, what's the environment, how is it different, both showing that in photos, but also in my writing. So I'm going to try to do that. And in the past, I know that I've had a lot of people tell me, if I wanted to see the sports, I can still watch it on NBC or whatever. But I bring a different perspective to those same stories. And so I want to kind of go off of that. And I think I do it as much for me as for everybody else, because that's kind of my journal, to go back and be able to, look at what I did. So, yeah.
Hey, Jeff, I got to split, but it was good to see you, and good to hear you. So we'll talk soon.
Yeah,
see you, everybody.
All right. Actually, Peter, you and I still need to work on a sports workshop with you and I.
Yes.
We'll talk next week.
Okay. We'll talk next week. Take care.
All right. Cool. So anyway, so that's Olympic update. There's a lot more coming. The other thing that's weird right now is Beijing is as active right now as Tokyo is. So I'm getting these emails crossing between BOCOG and TOCOG, Tokyo Organizing Committee and Beijing Organizing Committee, for housing and flights and credentialing and everything. It's just strange.
Are your logistics going to be easier?
No, logistics will be harder. Actually, one of the other things that's really weird, another interesting note, housing at the Olympics is obviously, hotels at any Olympic Games are quadruple their normal price or whatever it might be. So I have subsidized pricing as media. But now that Japan's not allowing international travel in, one of my questions is, why am I still paying an exorbitant amount of money, even at a subsidized price, when that same hotel is like half that price right now, because I looked online. So that'll be interesting too. But as far as the transportation, I normally don't take public transportation very often, almost all the time on what we call the TMs, which is the press busing, which takes us really right from our hotel, right to the press center, and from the press center to every venue. And the cool thing at the Olympics is every Olympic Games has Olympic lanes on any road going to any venue and any freeway going. So it's pretty handy to hop on those buses because we have no traffic. So, and starting in Rio, they had Wi-Fi transmitters on every bus with very fast internet, which is really cool because then I can blog from the bus. So hopefully that will still hold true. There's a couple comments here. Yep.
Is there any word that you can share with us whether or not you're going to be shooting with an R1 or whatever the designation is going to be?
I do not know what you're talking about. Okay, so nothing official. So I've not signed an NDA, so I can tell you what I know, which is I don't know anything for a fact right now. I can almost, well, I say almost guarantee, I'm very confident that I will not be shooting with any camera that I'm shooting with today in Tokyo. I think the Canon will have something new. And I gotta be careful how I say this. There's been communications with myself and Canon that we should be talking soon. There, how's that? I don't know. Now that could mean that you know, they just changed CPS from platinum and made me a double platinum. I don't know.
Because
So
normally you would have used your 1D Mark III then, right?
Well, so my
Normally.
1DX Mark III has literally, this was my webcam, by the way. So, so I'm using the new Canon webcam utility, which, by the way, is wicked better than my past webcam. And so I had the 1DX Mark III as my $10,000 webcam with a lens, which I forgot to cap, with a 24-105 lens on it, and that was my webcam. And then last night I realized, that's a pretty expensive webcam. And so I ordered the AC adapter for the 5D. So now I'm running a 5D Mark III and I have the 24-105 on there. And about 5 minutes before this webcast, I thought that's kind of overkill for the lens. And I bought a Pancake Lens, the little 40 millimeter. I bought it years ago because it was on sale for $100. I'm like, it's a cool, expensive lens cap. And I never used it, not once. Now I'm running my older 5D Mark III with the Pancake Lens, and that's my webcam, AC powered, and it looks remarkably better than my Logitech webcam. Because if you guys remember in the previous Zoom calls, the door behind me was like blown out, like it was just horrible. So now at least I've got more, I'm shooting it. I don't know what I'm at. I think I'm at f2.8 or f4. What can this lens do here? Yeah, 2.8. So, and it handles the degradation of light much better than the other webcam. So
keep telling us about the R1 here. That's what we want to hear.
Damn it. I was trying to get away. So I don't, so the fact is I don't know. I've seen the Canon rumors, and there's rumors of like an 85 megapixel camera. I don't want an 85 megapixel camera or 100 megapixel camera. There's all these rumors. I don't want it. I really don't want anything more than 30 is fine. If I wrote a blog, I don't know if you guys saw it, about 2 months ago, I think it was, of what I'd like to see Canon do with an R1. And when I wrote that blog, I did get some winks from some people, Canon, like, that's a nice blog. And I'm hoping that means that I'm close. I want 2 CF Express card slots. I want even better focusing. I want faster and better focusing, even though the focus on the R5 and R6 is quite good. It can always be better. I want adjustable frame rate. I want to be able to shoot at 3, 8, 15, 20, 30 frames per second. I want to be able to choose that. Right now, if you're in the full mirrorless mode, it's 1 or 20, which drives me nuts. What are the other things? I wrote some other stuff. Oh, better sensitivity with ISO. So, I always ask for this regardless of what camera it is. Give me cleaner ISO every time. And battery life is interesting because, on the 5, you guys have all seen the batteries on the 5. They're fairly small, but the battery on the 1DX is like this massive beast. And so this thing, although it's great to have such a large battery, which is why I did use it as my webcam initially, it makes the body bigger. But I do like having a little bit more battery life than on a 5D. So I'm not sure, and I don't usually put a grip on a camera. So we'll see what they do. Nikon has announced their top end camera, just announced it a couple weeks ago. Of course, I don't shoot Nikon, so I don't really care about it. I think what it'll do though is it will pressure Canon between Sony with the Alpha 1, Nikon with theirs. You know, Canon's not going to wait till after the Olympics to announce something. So the challenge I have for you guys is, depending on how it works, if I do get information on it and sign NDA, then I'll have to really shut up on this call. And if I have one in my hands, which does happen, then I won't be able to show it unless they announce it. And if they announce or pre-announce it before it's available and I've got it, I may not be able to show you images off of it, but I can at least give you my opinion of it or show it to you in my hand or whatever. I do not have one in my hands right now. So
how long would it take you to get used to it, to this new camera before the Olympics? It has to be a month. I don't know.
I told them 6 weeks. So
6
Canon
weeks.
asked me the same question. So Jeff, if we were to give you if you were to have a new camera, how much in advance would you need it? And I think it is about 6 weeks, because, you know, the difference between using the 1D and a 5D was, there was definitely differences, you know, with buttons and layouts and features. Going from the 5D or 1D to the mirrorless to the R5, R6 was a more dramatic jump. In, you know, I still to this day hit the record button for video on the R series by mistake, or I go to hit an ISO button and realize I don't need to hit ISO button. I've just got the back dial set for ISO. So, or what's worse is I go back to shooting with the SLR and I try to roll the dial for ISO and I have to hit the button first. So that split second of not knowing which camera's in my hand is enough to make a shot or not get a shot. And at the Olympics, that's too critical. So what I will do is, if they have one, so I'm leaving July 21st, I believe it is. So there's a good chance that by the beginning of June, I would have one. But again, that's all speculation at this point. And then if you see me if you ask me a question about the R1 and I go, I can't really say anything about it, then you'll know that I probably got one in my hands. So that's the best I could tell you. But I am very excited about it. I think that they're going to do a lot of the things that I want to see in that camera. I think that the R5 and 6 are so damn good that improving on that is just that much better. So I think that I think good times are coming. I mean, they're already good times right now with the current ones. So let me see a couple questions. Actually, Will made a good comment about my Tesla about Sentry Mode, and I have Sentry Mode turned off at my house, and it still drains.
Got it. That's always the easy answer for those. But I figured you were beyond that, knowing the level technical of tech competence you have.
But my SSD that was in there for the Sentry Mode, for those of you who don't know, the Tesla has cameras all around the car. So when you park it somewhere and someone comes by your car, it'll turn on all the cameras and record. It's pretty amazing. And if you honk your horn, it will record and save. So literally, I was driving on the freeway and there was a truck in front of me, and something like a piece of furniture flew out of the back of the truck and landed in the lane to my right. So I swerved around it. I immediately hit my horn because it starts the recording process and saves it. So that so I could call the CHP and tell them, hey, I've got recording with the license plate of the truck and the whole thing. It was pretty interesting. So that's Sentry Mode, and I have it turned off at my house because otherwise it just drains the car. So anyway.
Well, the cool thing is it'll cut back 10 seconds. When you hit the horn, it'll pull 10 seconds of previous video because it's got a running buffer with it.
Yes.
So it doesn't just start, it knows to look back.
It is. The car is like driving an iPhone. It is.
Computer on wheels.
It is incredible. Like, and if those of you who haven't driven one, driving one is an incredible experience because it is so fast. Like I've got an Acura NSX that's my sports car, and it makes it look slow. Even the lowest model Tesla, it's crazy. But anyway, I digress. Carl had second Moderna yesterday. Nothing so far. Knock on wood. That's great to hear. A little tired, but that's fine. I mean, I'll take that. Like I said, in 3.5 hours, I'll have mine, or 4.5 hours, I'll have mine. So my first one. So let's see here. Philip was asking if I've ever been assigned to a military zone. I've not done any military action, thankfully, and I don't think I'd want to. I'm too scared. So I don't know if I do very well at that. I would love the opportunity to shoot on an aircraft carrier. I know that Joe McNally did it. I think that'd be amazing. But
a couple of t-shirts.
So Mac likes quality of the video. The video quality on this so going back to the Canon webcam utility, I used the beta version and did not like it. It didn't seem to work very well. It didn't kick in right. It was very unreliable. The version I'm using now, which is the finished version, was incredibly easy to set up. I've not gotten it to work with FaceTime yet, weirdly enough, but for Zoom, it's been very, very simple. So, and by the way, I should mention, I couldn't figure out how I was going to put a tripod behind my my monitor. And Jason, my buddy, who's been on the call in the past, said to me, well, don't you have a magic arm? And so I have the Manfrotto Magic Arm, which clamps, and you can adjust it to almost any angle. So I've got a magic arm clamp from the bookshelf above down. And so it's sitting behind my monitor. And now that I'm using the Pancake Lens, it actually sits in the background very unobtrusively. So kind of cool. Although I may switch, I thought about switching to an f1.2 lens, but that might be a little too much separation. So anything about, so Will wants to know anything about the APS-C R series camera, like an R7. As a college student and sports shooter, the extra reach would be good. Yeah. And it would probably make a logical replacement for the 70 Mark II. So I have not heard anything from Canon on an APS-C version of an R. And, but to be frank, I've never asked, because to me, I've gotten so used to full frame, I can't imagine even shooting with a crop sensor. And so I get where you're coming from, Will, and I agree with you that it gives you extra reach. To me, I'd almost rather have full frame with a little bit more resolution so you could do your cropping later anyway. But yeah. I know where you're coming from on that. And I think that they probably will come out with one from a cost perspective anyway. I'll try to ask about that.
A great advantage if you're using the R5 is just activate the 1.6 in-camera crop.
Yeah.
And that really is even better than adding a extender of some sort, right? Because you're using the center of the image sensor, you're using the center of the glass, you're getting that extra reach. You have enough megapixels to do that with, and everything's better. It focuses faster. I was just out photographing owls this morning through trees with eye tracking, and as soon as you activate the 1.6, it cuts through all the branches even better.
Yeah, I did that with a D800 at one point when I was shooting Nikon, but yeah, I've looked at the R6. The R6, unfortunately, the 1.6 crop, I think it's like 7.7 megapixels, which is usable for some things, but starting to get a little bit lower maybe than I'd like to be using.
But with the R5, it gets you, I think it's around 14.
Yeah,
something like that.
20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. Actually, I had a discussion with someone at dinner last week about resolution. And I remember in the trade show days, remember trade shows? And this was years ago when I was at Lexar. We took one of my images and enlarged it to 12 feet by 6 feet, give or take. And it was a 4 megapixel file.
Wow.
Interpolated, but it looked fine. So
well, now you just had a big update with Adobe. So they're putting that, what are they calling it?
Super resolution.
Yeah.
And that's taking whatever file you're putting into it and doubling it. And in the tests I've done with it, it's incredible.
I haven't even played with it yet.
It's pretty exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like really good stuff.
It's
so you
smooth.
would do the doubling before you crop or after you crop?
Well, if you're doing it in post-production, the way Adobe illustrated the super resolution is you do the crop, then you do the super resolution.
Gotcha.
And it takes whatever that file size is and doubles it. And it enhances things in a really nice way that it really doesn't look enhanced.
Which is
they're all getting
goal,
really,
right?
yeah. And they're all really getting good at it. Topaz theirs is really good too.
Yeah.
They have a pixel enhancer that does a really nice job if you're taking a small file. But yeah, you're right, Jeff. I mean, I remember taking the first EOS 1D digital, not the 1DS, and printing wall art. We've come to be pixel peepers.
Right.
And you got to remember proper viewing distance. So proper viewing distance, they still look great.
I tell people when you look at proper viewing distance, I tell people, if you walk up to an image and you really inspect it, but I said, if you go to a billboard, the pixels are this big. Like the dots are literally, I don't know if you guys have ever seen a billboard up close. The dots are like the size of a beach ball. I mean, they're huge, right? And so,
exactly.
And so it always made me laugh when people would go up at a trade show and get really close to an image. I'm like, why are you doing that? It's not meant to be looked at like that. And I shot an entire ad campaign for billboards in Times Square. And there was, I think, 7 billboards running at one time, all my shots. And I'll never forget this because it was for something for Team USA, or actually it wasn't, it was synchronized swimming. And they were going to be enlarged to 150 feet high by whatever. Well, the girls that I photographed were not part of the team. They were basically a high school girl, but they didn't, how do I put this politically? I gotta be careful here. There was stubble where they shaved, there was shave burn or whatever. I spent literally, I think 14 hours removing hair follicles and stubble and shave burn. And the ad agency is like, wait, why are you doubling the price? I said, well, it's either that or and I sent them the image. They go, we're paying the price, do it. Because it had to be done. Because if you were on a really large screen, that would be pretty glaring. But anyway, I digress. It was an interesting shot. And that was taken, those images were taken with a 10 megapixel camera, I think, give or take. Let's see here. Global shutter on the R1. Do I care about that? Maybe. Don't know yet. It depends on what I'd have to test it and see how much better it is than what I've got today. John got first Pfizer shot 2 weeks ago, just a sore arm for 2 days. And I'm assuming when you guys talk about sore arm, it's like someone punching you in the arm or something, which I'm not too worried about shooting tomorrow with that because I play ice hockey. I'm used to getting beat up and then shooting. Let's see here. Wow, Bob covered elections during the wait, what? Oh, Civil War in El Salvador. I'm like, you're not old enough to shoot Civil War.
In Central America.
Yeah, that would be, how was that? Was that scary?
Yeah. I thought I wanted to be a conflict photographer. And after 10 days there, you see immature 10, 11, 12-year-olds with machine guns and just dead bodies in the streets. It's like, no, can't do this. South side of Chicago is bad enough. And I covered enough of that for the Sun-Times.
Yeah. To me, one of the great things about what we do, Bob, is that we get to generally cover happy occasions and beautiful things. And I mean, not that people can be beautiful, but just things that are happy and positive. I don't know if seeing dead bodies would be one of those things that just traumatize you for life, I would think.
Yeah, in some respects, in other countries, third world countries, it makes you
turn off my light.
Wonder about life because it's so dispensable and so cheap in many ways, meaning this kid who's clearly not mature and brain is not developed is in charge of this block, and whatever he says goes, and they would just shoot people if they thought they were going to vote the wrong way. And then the bodies are left there as examples. And it's just like, I don't know how guys like James Knockway did it for their entire career.
Well, and even dodging bullets and things. I mean, that's just so outside, even something I can ever.
Well, the adrenaline's pretty fun. I have to admit that there is a certain adrenaline rush that gets addictive.
Yeah, but I get that at the Olympics without people shooting.
Sure. Sure. Very true.
Okay, so let's change the subject. Bob, can you really use the new Photoshop with the new features on the computer I see behind you?
I doubt it. I think it would choke it to death.
Yeah, that thing's a relic.
It just plays music. I just like it so much. My wife's like, why don't you just get rid of that piece of because it was my first desktop one and the design is so cool. It just plays music.
Love it. All right, let's hear. Let's see. Max says that the Magic Arm is amazing, by the way. It's a great product.
1,000,001 uses.
What's that?
Remote can't, it's 1,000,001 uses.
It is. You can use it.
I mean, it's
for
always
all
in my
kinds of
bag.
stuff. I have a bunch of them, and actually, the Olympics, unfortunately, they require the metal, the full metal set with a metal mount, so it's heavier than hell, but it's cool. Canon seems to be following the DSLR lineup. Bob and Don say, and I agree with that. And I think from a lens perspective, we'll see that as well. I should say hi to Don and Anita. I see you guys there. Hi.
We have one account. It's her name.
There you go. I saw that too.
Yeah,
But,
because it does seem like, the R started out, when you think about it, like the old EOS lineup when it was just the EOS.
Yeah.
And then the 5 is parallel to a 5 series camera. The 6 is the same as a 6 series camera. So you could
And
kind
the
of
lenses will
guess.
follow suit too, right?
Yep. Yep. And you could kind of guess there is enough of a wildlife birding market out there that it wouldn't surprise me if we see an R7 at some point,
Yeah.
because it'll bring that price point down for people that don't want to spend, $3,500 on an R5 to just crop in, so it just makes logical sense. And they're going to, do that progression right up to the 1 series.
Yep, I think so too. I do. I mean, look, we don't know that there's gonna be an R1, but you and I also know there's gonna be an R1.
Right.
It's just, it makes
Right.
logical sense.
It makes logical sense.
Yeah, and even with the lenses, I mean, there's a lot of EF lenses today. Those will be mimicked as well. We'll see that in our RF lenses as well. So, and I do expect to use a lot more than just a new camera. I do expect I'll probably be using potentially prototype or new lenses as well at the Olympics. So, and actually, Tara Woods asked a question. He said it'll be interesting to see what the media press passes get you at the Olympics. He knows a couple of people who are going, who are discussing the venturing into multiple venues might be restricted for shooters. So what they've said is that we're gonna have to actually make reservations for the venues, which is really going to be limiting, because so many times in the past, I'll be shooting an event and I'll be, let's say, walking from one place to another, and I'll be walking by a venue and I'll hear the crowds. I'm like, what's going on in there? And I go, well, I got an extra hour, and I'll hop in and shoot fencing or wrestling or boxing or something. And it's like, oh, I'll just hop in there. And so if everything's done through reservation, I will have to be much more buttoned up and organized. And the other question will be, how much in advance do I have to designate that? So is it something where I have to 3 days in advance give them my schedule, 7 days in advance, or an hour in advance? And I'm expecting that could also be different for outside venues versus inside. So if it's soccer or something that's outdoors, or sailing, that you'll be able to be less restricted. Of course, sailing, generally we're shooting from chase boats. Then the question would be, how many people are allowed on the boat? So it's going to be, it'll clearly be more restricted. Even in the press center, they said is going to run at 50% capacity. So most of the time, the press center is running at 50% capacity anyway, because we're out shooting or sleeping. But opening and closing ceremonies, it's mayhem in there. So it will be interesting to see how that works. Even how many employees Canon, Nikon, and Sony have in their back rooms doing the servicing and loaning of product will be different probably. So it's going to be, like I said earlier, strange, different, challenging, exhausting, but also back to Bob's point about the adrenaline. I think just being at the Olympics, especially after waiting an additional year, I'll just be glad to get the hell out of here and be somewhere, shooting and have that excitement. So,
Are they requiring everybody to be vaccinated?
weirdly enough, they're not.
That's odd. I would think with
it's-
the flow of vaccine now that it would just, international travel, I foresee it
Yep.
coming to a point where you're going to need a vaccine passport.
Yeah. Well, and so so speaking of that, here's what I find strange. One is that they're not requiring it yet. Two, the IOC is not requiring it, but Japan may say you can't fly in unless you're vaccinated. That could
Right.
And then it's the government putting that on you versus the IOC, right? It's kind of like when they say businesses can't require you to be vaccinated, whatever. So that's probably the way they get around it. Like I said, I'm getting vaccinated tonight, finally, because I've been trying to for so long. Part of the reason is I want to be fully vaccinated at that point. The other thing I find interesting is, on our phones, we have our digital wallets, right? And our iPhones or your Android phone. And I've got, all my credit cards. Why can't we put our vaccinations in there? It is secured. And so we can just have a barcode, a QR code or something to have proof of that. The fact that they hand you a piece of paper just seems archaic to me.
It is archaic. It's a piece
Right?
of cardboard.
I know. And it's like, I'll take a picture of it and put it on my phone, but why not so I heard it in Los Angeles County that they actually have a digital wallet app that allows you to store it. But why this isn't done nationwide when they've been working on the vaccine for a year, knowing it was
Right.
coming, is very bizarre to me. I don't.
The card that they've been giving out in Chicago doesn't even have a foil or a stamp or a seal. You could easily just scan it, copy it, here you go.
Right.
Which I'm sure is happening, but
Yeah,
you're right. To your point, the electronic version, it could be verified and instantly.
And there's going to be
checked.
some passport. I mean, they've said there's going to be some kind of health passport or whatever they're going to call it.
Well, it only makes sense to allow travel to kick in again and then to minimize any of the variants or anything
Right.
else.
Well,
right?
even for photo tours, I don't know if I would necessarily require that our attendees be vaccinated, but I would heavily suggest it. If someone is an anti-vaxxer or has religious reasons why they can't, or they have medical conditions that don't allow it for something, then you can't require it, right? But ultimately, if I had a choice, I would rather have someone who is vaccinated to know that they're not going to be deathly ill. If you get the flu on a photo tour, that sucks and you move on or whatever. But you don't want someone getting so ill that it's catastrophic. So,
Well, I think, like you said before, it's going to be up to the governments because a lot of countries require you to have yellow fever or to have, whatever type of vaccine they require to get into country. That's just going to become a part of it.
yeah, I think so too. And actually, it's funny because I really hate shots, and I'm getting my first vaccine tonight. Then, of course, I have the follow-up one in April. I need to get my yellow fever one because for Kenya this summer. And I also haven't done the shingles one yet. So I've got like 5 of them.
Oh,
and I heard
boy,
the shingles one hurts.
Yeah, I've had all of those too. Yellow fever, gamma globulin, you get the little knot in your muscle. And the only vaccine ever that has made me ill is the shingles. And the second one, I was out for 24 hours. The chills and just sore muscle aches. And
yeah, so at least with COVID, here's the thing, like I hate shots, right? And you guys can all relate to this probably. The one good thing about COVID is when I go to get it tonight, as opposed to thinking this sucks, I hate shots, it's like, give me my career back, right? Let me travel again. Make me somewhere, let me make some income again. Like I could think like, as they're giving me the shot for that 10 seconds, I'm going to be thinking about all the positive stuff that comes with it because it's just, let me hug my friends again. Let's get together and have lunch versus, Zoom. And Zoom with all you guys is awesome. But Zoom with my really close friends who live so close to here and we can't get together sucks.
Oh, I know my in-laws will not allow us to see him because, my father-in-law is kind of health compromised. He's really, really careful. And he's like, yeah, you guys can't come. I don't want to see anybody till everything's, and rightfully so. So looking forward to that.
Paula said that shingles is a live virus. Interesting. The shot is a live virus. Huh. Interesting. David just said in the UK, some companies will make it compulsory to have the COVID vaccine to be employed there, which is interesting. And there's a whole political debate that we probably want to get into, but should a company be allowed to require a vaccine in order to work there? And and thank you, by the way, Eugene, for telling me that. She says, you will not even feel the shot. I've heard that. I will be very happy. And actually, to be honest with you, like I said, I don't like shots, but I can't wait to get this shot. I just put this sucker in my arm. But it is interesting to see what happens. So it has not yet tested in court. Interesting. But here, I don't even know if the US would even go to that point. And I think Qantas was the first airline, I believe, that said, we're not going to fly anybody on our flights if they're not vaccinated. And I think others will follow suit to that. One interesting note on Tanzania, because we go there quite a bit. So Tanzania, the previous president didn't even order any vaccines. Very controversial. Well, he died, I heard last week, of COVID complications, which is interesting. They now have a female president in Tanzania. Now, for those of you who've been to Africa with me, that's really progressive for that country to have a woman president. I think it's pretty awesome. And she's ordered a ton of vaccines. So smart woman.
Hawaiian Air requires you to take your test on a Zoom session with a Hawaiian Air supervisor to make sure
Or at the airport, right?
We're testing.
Interesting. Huh.
Wow. Hey, Jeff, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Terrell. I'm calling from a car. That's why. Hey, hey, are you guys going to have to be tested daily? Because I'd rather have I've had my shots already.
Yeah. But
the testing daily is the thing that has driven me up the wall. I do not like it.
So yeah, here's the thing. They did not say daily. They did say periodically.
Okay.
And the other question is, I've never had the one that goes deep into the.
That's what we have to do.
Still now?
Yeah.
Oh God, I will freak out if that. I want the one that just goes like right here, and you kind of do your own, and that one I'm okay with. The deep, that would suck. I will not be a happy camper. But again, I figure by July, especially being vaccinated, hopefully between now and July, we will have more clarity on what those games will look like, and the risk involved. I mean, there's still a chance that we don't go or that it gets canceled.
Oh, wow.
But I don't think that'll be the case. I think that we're going, and I think it'll happen. But I don't know. Yeah, that would freak me out if they have to do the brain thing every 3 days or something. I would not be happy about that because I've avoided it this far. But and I'll have to look at the documentation that they sent me and see if there's anything in there that talks about how it's tested. So we'll find out because there's so many rapid tests. Have you've seen the like at home testing now and stuff? So
yeah.
So I'm hoping that it's something like that where you walk in to the press center every 3 days, you spit, hand it to them. They say, okay, go work and come back here in 10 minutes for your clearance for the day or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
Be careful of being false positive on those quick tests, right? They're not as
right.
reliable.
That is the challenge. And so again, I'm hoping that I know the other tests I've done where you just kind of go to the base of the nose, just the beginning, that those are supposedly 99 or 95%. So I'm hoping that would be the case, especially if they're doing it for everybody all the time. I'm hoping it'd be really fast and easy we'll see. Let's see here. Joe got first Pfizer Saturday. Large snifter of Gramier. 11. That's hysterical. That's the best advice I've ever heard, Joe. You know what? Drink. Because I did see that you can't do Motrin. You can't do they have all these different things especially before the vaccine. They say if you take Motrin and stuff like that, and it makes it less effective when you get the shot. So I will say this. It is nice to hear so many people on this call and people I talk to who are vaccinated, because it wasn't that long ago where I thought these things are so scarce. I've never met anybody who had it, and it's gone from that to what we're seeing today. And I just feel like that is such a huge shot in the arm, literally. But also, you look at these, dare I say, idiots that are in Miami on spring break who just, and I get it. We were all young and stupid at one point in our lives where we say, oh, it's not going to happen to me. But it is amazing to me that these people are out there just acting like it's no big deal. So hopefully with the vaccine, those of us who are smart enough to take care of it. And I think at least it sounds like in the next couple of weeks, at least here in California, anybody can get it from 16-year-old and up. So at least it won't be limited to people 65 and over. So That's at least positive. So anyway, any other questions? I'm trying to think what else I had written down as I talk about. I had a bunch of stuff here. We covered most of it.
Hey, Jeff, next time you have one of these Zoom calls, maybe after the Olympics, it'd be nice to hear your workflow.
You know what? Someone else asked me that question, and I actually could do that. Maybe I'll actually do a demo of workflow.
Yeah,
Although
because
I found with most of it's in photomechanic is most of where I'm doing it. And
Yeah.
weirdly enough, in Zoom lately, when I scroll, like at first it shows up for screen share. And then when I start demoing stuff and opening different windows, people can't see it. So maybe if I did like a full screen, I could have to do it on my laptop because the screen is massive. So it'd be like this small on your displays. But I could do it on the laptop and maybe do that. That would be
yeah, because I have a funny feeling if the new flagship Canon pulls a surprise on us and is a very large megapixel camera, what's our workflow going to be, especially those who have to hand off to any agencies or whatever, you know?
I think, Terrell, I think that honestly, if it is a massive resolution, let's call it 85. I think I think it'll be user selectable to kick it down. I do.
Yeah.
Because they know that a bunch of us don't want or need 85. Like ultimately,
Right.
This is something I talked about in my blog. I talked about the resolution. I said, what I'd love to be able to use 85 at times. Like when I'm in Africa and I'm shooting something that's really far away and I want to be able to crop it and have a really great high res, that would be beautiful. But if I'm shooting water polo at the Olympics and the team only really needs a 1 megapixel, they don't, it's going on the web or social media for the most part. Not to say that they don't want it for marketing use later, but they don't need 85. They don't even need 45. They arguably don't even need 25. But to me, I don't want to go through 3,000 images if they're 85 megapixel images because it will slow me down. So I'm hoping that that they will give us option for resolution and frames per second rate.
Yeah.
Those are the two things I think that would be most beneficial to us sports and wildlife photographers. But like I said, in Africa, there are times when you have those critical moments where I'd love to be able to quickly kick it into 85 megapixels and then be able to crop down to 45 and have a killer image. Although with that said, in all the times I've been to Africa and I've shot with 20 and 30 megapixel cameras, right? 1D and the 5D. And there's very rarely a shot that I've cropped that's too low resolution. Then I'm taking a small portion of a screen and taking an image, but for the most part, I'll crop in, but it won't be horrible. It'll still be usable. So, I mean, I don't even really need 85. I just don't.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that Canon doesn't get into this whole megapixel war just to outspec Nikon and Sony, which is typically why we see it, right? I mean, most. When I was at Lexar, we made USB drives. I've got one laying around here. And where'd it go? Just had it. Anyway, we made these drives. And it's sitting right here. Here it is. So here's an older 64. I'm at the new camera now. Here's a 64 gigabyte high speed. This uses SLC, the fastest flash memory. So this is going to go with my Tesla. That drive, 64 gig. Now, when I started at Lexar, we were making 16 megabyte jump drives. And we moved up and moved up and moved up, and we went to 1 gigabyte, 2 gigabyte. Well, we started making 8, 16, 32, 64, 128 gigabyte. And I thought, and the only reason we did it is because we could, because it was just as cheap to build an 8 gigabyte as a 4. Or it's just cheap to make a 32 later on as it was an 8. But here's the thing. How many people are putting 64 gigabytes on a drive? Most people, when they take a USB drive like this, they're putting Word documents, Excel, maybe your images. But even then, like most people are not coming anywhere near the capacity. And so you're creating it because you can, or to win the battle. Okay, now Lexar has a SD card that's 256 gig and SanDisk doesn't. Well, great, good bragging rights. What size is that one? I see you holding it up there. It's, I've got some really old ones. I've got some 16 meg cards here above me from my old days at the company. But like you can build stuff because it's buildable, and you can build stuff because people need it, right? And so the megapixel race to me is a bragging rights more than what most people need. Not everybody. There are people that shoot billboards or that need those large images. I'm just not one of them. So
I think the one thing we can be assured of is that Canon will lead in the price.
as far as the
It
higher
will be
or
the
lower?
most, I think they will be higher than the Sony.
It'll be interesting. Well, from what I've seen so far, and you know, this is not because Canon sponsors me, but at least from a build quality. Oh, I forgot to tell you this story. From a build quality, I think Canon's build at least feels less plasticky than the Sony one.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I forgot to tell you guys this. I should have started with this. 3 days ago, I was doing a shoot at a local park here. I was doing a family portrait session, and I bounced an R6. Literally, so I had the lens attached to my Black Rapid strap, and the lens came unmounted from the camera. And I hate taking these off because I don't want dust in my sensor. But this thing was open and exposed on the R6, and the damn thing dropped about 6 feet, maybe 4 feet, with the flash attached. Boom, 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 and hit the deck. And I'm with this family. I'm like, oh shit. And then, and now I'm thinking, oh my God, did I hit the lens mount? Is it going to mount? Is it going to work? Put the lens back on. Perfect. And weirdly enough, there's not a scratch on it. Like, it's like, I'm looking at it like, did I crack anything? Did I scratch anything? And there's nothing. So I'm like, okay, it must have hit on the flash first. So I inspected the flash, still nothing. So build quality matters.
Yeah.
It did freak me out though when I dropped it, but they are built solid. And this is an R6. It's not a pro level, you know, like the 1D. I've dropped like this 1D. You could drop these things and you expect it to last. And I was photographing a waterfall with a real 1DX and slipped and almost went over the waterfall and grabbed a branch. And my 1DX slammed into a rock because I didn't care about the camera. And I put a big scratch on the 1DX, but the thing worked perfectly. So of course, like I said, the last thing I thought about at that point was my camera. But
Jeff, did not read in one of your blogs way in the past that you actually prefer smaller cards because this way you can pass them on to other no?
Nope,
Okay.
definitely not me. I like big cards. I was shooting a wedding. I'll never forget it. I was shooting a wedding, and it was during the reception, and they go, introducing, you know, and the bridal party, and they're coming in, and I'm shooting, and they go, introducing the bride and groom. It's Mr. and Mrs. And I got to shoot, and I'm like, oh shit. I filled the card. And so the most important of all the groupings, I got nothing. Luckily, I had a second shooter with me who got it. But I mean, so this was in the old days. That was a 4 GB card in a. So literally, if you look at my desk right now, I've got a 1 TB card, a 256 GB card, and then a bunch of other 350 GB CF Express cards. And all my SDs are minimum of 128 gig minimum. And
Yes,
it's not that I shoot that much. So the 1 TB cards are designed to be my second card slot. Actually, in the 1DX right now, there's only one in there right now, and it's a 1 TB. So it acts as like a built-in backup. And then I put in my primary card in the first slot and shoot to both, just to make sure I have my images. But the 1 TB is almost like a built-in SSD in your camera. But the primary card, I still like to have tons of headroom. So I do that because not that I need it, but I know that if I'm shooting, and honestly, typical day for me to shoot, like if I'm shooting a wedding or bar mitzvah, is at least 3,000 images, that I know that the card can handle it, and I'll never have to worry about running out of room. And so it's just having that headroom to do it. Now, granted, I use ProGrade digital product, and they sponsor me, so you know they give me product. So I asked for big stuff. So it's a little different than buying it. I agree with that. So if I was paying for it, would I opt to pay for a 1 terabyte card? Probably not. But I probably would opt for a 500 gig card as my second card slot for sure. So I do not, and I despise low capacity cards, and I don't like it when people tell me that's too many eggs in one basket. Because if you have 2 card slots, for God's sakes, shoot to 2 cards. Because I've been in the industry, I've seen them fail, I've had them fail. It will happen. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. So you gotta think about that redundancy, because you don't want to go to your client and say, sorry, you have to redo your wedding.
So at the Olympics, do you anticipate, the wireless transmissions of the R5, R6?
Won't use them.
No. But here's my question. Do you anticipate that with the new R1, whatever it's going to be, are you only going to shoot to the camera, or are you going to at the same time wirelessly transmit to some kind of, to the cloud or whatever?
No, I'll shoot only to the camera, and I'll use, these cards are fast. The CF Express cards are wicked fast. And on my laptop, hold on here. So on my laptop, I have that plate on here, this metal plate. So my readers, whatever I'm using, are magnetic onto that plate, right? So I will have a second plate on this side. I will have 2 CF Express card readers on one on each side. So I can shove in multiple cards and read to Thunderbolt 3 on both of them. And so that is faster than any wireless transmission will be. So I don't expect to use wireless. Now, that could change depending on the speed of the wireless and how they have it configured. And maybe Canon has put in something really amazing and new, that where it's a good usable product like that, maybe. A lot of the services that shoot the Olympics, they go right to the Ethernet port on this thing. Where is the Ethernet port? It's on here.
Yeah, I'd just be too scared about conflict with Wi-Fi conflict with so many guys around me.
Well,
I'd have to shoot. I'd have to shoot straight to the Ethernet.
You still would shoot straight to your card, but I can tell you, and I think I told you guys this in the past, shooting the, I'll never forget the Pyeongchang women's final hockey game against Canada. And I had to submit images, every period, because for social media, they want to be able to tell the US fans like, hey, watch the game, we're up 1-0 or whatever it is. And I could not submit my images to the team. And I was freaking out because the head of communications for the team was sitting right over, like in the rafters above me. And I wrote to him and I texted him and said, like, I'm trying to send you images and I can't get them to you. And I thought he was gonna be pissed off. And instead he told me, I'm trying to send a tweet of 100 characters and can't send it. So I'm like, oh, good. So I had the laptop sitting next to me with Dropbox, which typically just runs in the background. And I'm shooting the second period, figuring that at some point it went because people watching the game, they're not gonna be on the internet. It never went. So the second period, I had to put it on a USB drive. And of course, my contact for the team, they can't get onto ice level. Even the head of communications can't, because I am up credentialed to shoot it. So I had to run from the ice level and meet him at a staircase where we could both have access to hand off a drive to him. That was the only way to get images. So relying on wireless internet, you're right, Terrell. It's risky. If it works, great. But boy, at the Olympics, you just, or many places, you just can't rely on it. Not to the level of you can. And the other thing is, I know my workflow, I have my workflow down to such a system that, like for instance, I know that if the puck, or we'll stick, well, in hockey, if the puck's at the other side of the ice and there's 3 seconds left in that period, it's not coming back.
It's not coming back.
So I'll already have that card out of the camera. My laptop's already up on my lap. I'm waking it up to get ready to download like that fast. So I'm trying to think ahead. So
are you a voice tagger?
I don't voice tag. I do rate in the camera. I'll hit the rate button. I don't voice tag anything. I know people who do. I'll see guys from voice tagging is if you hit the microphone button on your camera and you say, number 8 scored a goal, second period, 3 minutes in, or whatever. And then
Right.
when you download, you can have those voice tags go to the image. I don't. I just rate the ones. If I've got a logical break and I can look down at my camera to see what I just shot, I know I got a killer image of this one. I'll rate it. And I remember in Pyeongchang when the La Moreau sisters scored the game-winning goals in that hockey in the gold medal game, and when the one sister tied the game and she celebrated, I got this killer shot of her celebrating. And I remember texting the communication lead for the team and said, "I got your cover shot for the magazine." I knew I had it.
Wow.
And then her
How
sister
cool.
scored and got a better shot. And I wrote back to him and said, "Scrub that, I got a better one for you." But
Oh, that's
you know,
so
when
cool.
we're shooting, and you notice when you're shooting, typically we know when we got the killer shot. Now I'm zooming in on this LCD and hoping it's as sharp as I think it is. You know, the worst time is when you think you have the shot and then you get on your computer and it's not sharp enough. But so mentally, I know when I've got a shot that is what I want.
Okay.
At least that's the goal. Yeah. Whew. I went from a Zoom call to this Zoom call. I'm zoomed out for the day. I'm less than 4 hours from getting my shot. So next time I talk to you, I will be vaccinated and happy about it.
All right.
So good to see all of you guys. And I am trying to work on getting another guest appearance from someone exciting. So I will keep you posted on that here for April. So, and I was trying to do these every 2 weeks. I'll try to get back to that again. It just depends on my schedule. So, but it's cool to see all you guys. Hope everybody's doing well. If you have any additional questions, just blast me an email and let me know. But we're almost through this. That's my fingers crossed. Okay.
Love your Olympic blogs. The behind the scene kind of thing is phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that comment. I appreciate that. You know, honestly, just the fact that people like you say that, it makes it, because there's times when writing it, I just think like, who am I writing this for? Or why am I doing it? So that it means a lot. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that a lot. And with that,
Your blog has a special folder on my computer.
what? That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. I don't even have that for mine. Thank you for that. We'll see y'all soon.
All
All right,
right,
guys.
guys.
Later.
Bye-bye.